Welcome to the Roadmap to Learning C series. This step-by-step guide is designed for absolute beginners who want to learn C programming from scratch. Each episode is carefully numbered, so if you've watched episode 1, you can be confident that you'll understand everything in episode 2 and beyond. Every line of code will be explained with no surprises. The episodes will be short, 10 to 20 minutes, and gradually be longer as we dive into the project. Let's get on with it. Sup guys, welcome to today's show and welcome to this new series about the roadmap to C programming. We're going to start programming our first program in just a minute, but since this is the first episode, I just want to mention a few things. When you code, you always code for the future. And what do I mean by that? Well, when you write your different commands, they are not being executed at once. You create a file and that file will be executed later. That's one important fact. And when you program C, this is a three-way process. So first you write your code, and you do that in a text editor, and you save that piece of code. That's the first step. Step number 2, you compile that code. That means you run a command which will turn your program code into something that the computer understands. Machine code, ones and zeros, and that will create a program. Like in Windows, that's an exe file, for instance. And 3, you start your program. So these are the 3 steps that you iteratively will cycle through all the time. Write code, compile, start program. Write code, compile, start program. And the biggest part of any programming is troubleshooting. This is where you will spend most of your time. Perhaps 50-50 between writing code and troubleshooting. So don't feel discouraged when your program doesn't work, because it doesn't matter what level you're on, you always put in most hours into troubleshooting. That's just the way programming works. Alright, so that's enough of that. Let us create our first program. So you can use any text editor you like. I use Visual Studio Code with a Vimotions extension, but you can use whatever. So I will start this process by creating a new file, and all the files should end in .c. That is the extension. And since our first program will be a so-called Hello World program, I will call this hello.c. And every program has a skeleton. It's a piece of code that you always put in, no matter what you want the code to do. And my skeleton looks like this. I will explain every part of it in just a second. So this is the skeleton for C programming. Every language has its skeleton, and this is for C. So the first line here, the green line, It might have another color or no color at all in your program. This is a so-called comment. And the comment starts with a slash and a star, and they end in a star and a slash. So the characters reversed. Everything in between here is a comment. And this have no effect whatsoever on your program code. I can delete this line and nothing will change. So these are just like labels or headlines. You put in text here to remind yourself of different things or to explain the code in case something might be tricky to understand or similar. And I always start my programs by putting the name of the file so I know where I'm at. Then we have this include statement, and you might have several of these depending on what you are currently programming. And C is a modular language. That means that you don't have access to the whole language at once, because that would be very inefficient. A lot of the memory would be filled with unnecessary stuff. But you include the stuff that you need for that specific program. So this is the most common include statement, the standard input-output, stdio. So these are the functions that print things to the screen, that read stuff from the keyboard, open files, and a lot of different stuff that has to do with input and output. And you will probably always use this one. And if you need access to other functions, you will add more include statements. And they always start in this hashtag character. And then you have your include file inside of these brackets. In some cases, you might see this as well. So the same structure, but quotes instead of these brackets. And the difference is where the compiler will look for these files. So if you use these brackets, then it will look for the file in a centralized library. If you use these quotes, it will look for this file in your current directory, the same directory that you have this C file. So basically, when you include your own stuff, you use this way of describing it. And when you use a central library, you use this way. So I will remove this line because I have no file.h. And we will talk more about these so-called header files later on. All right, then we come to this int main part. And this is a function. And everything in C evolves around function. That is a piece of code, basically. You can have several of these or just one, but you need at least one. And you recognize that it's a function because of these two round brackets. And every program, you can have a lot of different functions doing different stuff with different names. This function's name is main. And you always need to have a main function, because the code that you put inside of these curly braces, that is the code that will run when you start the program. So the main is the entry point to your program. And the return statement is the exit point of the function. Functions can have return values, and that's what's specified after this return statement. We will learn all of that stuff later when we define our own functions. As of now, you can think of this return 0 as exit the program. So for instance, if you put the return 0 in the beginning and you put some code here, this code will never execute, because this return 0 will exit the program, the first thing it does. Alright, so this is the general skeleton. Every time you create a new .c file, a new program, you will always have this stuff. And today it will be a very simple program, just trying things out, and we will print the classical text "Hello World" to the screen, and that's always how you begin a programming course. And you do that by calling another function, which is a library function included in this, which is called printf. And it's called printf because it has the ability to print in a formatted kind of way. We'll get into that more later, but for now we will just do this. Alright, so what does this mean? You might recognize these round brackets, same as after the main function here. And as I mentioned, that shows that this is a function. And in this case, we are calling a function which is already there. So we're calling the printf function because we want to print something to the screen. And we want to print the message "Hello World," so that is what we're putting right here. This new line character at the end, the \n, yeah, that's a new line character. So if you want like to enter down, this is what you put in. So if we wouldn't put this in, it would print "Hello World," and then there would be other text after that. But I can show you later on. Let's start this way. And every piece of code inside of a function, like we are here, will always end in a semicolon. So that is important to remember. Not all languages have these end-of-line characters, but C does. And inside of a function, you always do this. Almost always. I will give you some exceptions to this rule later on, but for now, this is enough. And then I'll put back the return 0 to exit the program. Since this is the end of the file right here, and the end of the main function, it will still exit, but it's good practice to put the return statement in to be explicit of your intent. Alright, so in order to understand this better, I will repeat some things of it. So this is a comment. It has no effect on the execution of your program. This include statement is telling the compiler that we want to use a specific set of functions, which is in this standard input-output library. And the function is printf in this case. This int main statement defines a function with this content inside of the curly braces. what this int means, we will get to tomorrow in the next episode. But for now, you always begin your program with int main, because this is what will be executed when you run your program. And this returns 0, exits the program in this case, and this printf statement prints the text hello world ending in a new line. Alright, so let's save this. And how you compile the code depends on what system you're running. I am on I'm running Windows on this computer, but I'm coding against a Linux server, so this is where I will compile my code. I have linked up my VS Code, so it automatically uploads it to this server as soon as I save. But you can compile your code inside of Windows. Almost 100% of my code compiles on both Linux and Windows, and Mac for that matter. But if you want to compile my code in Windows, I recommend downloading a program called Cygwin. That is a POSIX compiler. And I will not get into what POSIX means, but it's a standard for compilers, which is the same as I'm running in my system. Okay, so when we compile our code, we use the GCC command. GCC is the name of the compiler. And we first give it the name of the file, hello.c. And we also need to specify the output file, because this compiler will read the input file, hello.c, and create a program. And we need to name that program. So you do -o space and then the name of the file you want to create. And the convention is to use the same name as the .c file, but without the .c extension. So hello in this case, and then press enter. And if this happens, that it just moves down to the next line, that means everything has worked. If you have an error in your code, GCC will tell you, but otherwise it just prints nothing. And now you will have an additional file, hello, and you can run that file by doing /hello and pressing enter. And it prints our message, hello world. So what have we learned today? We have learned the basics on how C programming works, the 3-step process of creating your code, compiling, and running your program. We have also learned the general structure, the skeleton, if you will, of the .c file. And we know about comments and include statements. We know about the function main, which executes when your program starts. We know about the printf function for printing stuff to the screen. And we know what the new line character \n is doing. And we do also know how to exit our programs with the return statement. So if you like this episode, please like and subscribe. There will be a couple of these episodes the coming days. So click the bell icon so you will get a notification when I release them. I will also give you a small exercise, and if you really want to learn the C programming, you should do these exercises, because it's not only necessary to learn the actual bits and pieces of the information. You learn programming by programming. So until the next episode, I want you to write 2 more programs of the same kind as this hello world. And I want you to, well, the first time you do it, you will probably need to look at your old code, but as little as possible. And when you write it the 3rd time, I hope that you can write most of the code without having to look too much. Because you need to put in the most work in the beginning, then the rest will be easy. And you need to learn this skeleton by heart, basically. So when you watch the next episode, you should be able to write this program. All right, thanks for watching, thanks for tonight.